The mold that grows in the oil not only reproduces at an astonishing speed, but also poses a deadly threat to humans. Just a slight contact with these molds will lead to infection and cause people to fall into a coma rapidly. If not treated within 2 hours, there will be a life-threatening danger. The man speculated that it would take at most 2 hours for the mold to completely infect the hospital. What's worse, the disinfectant has no effect on this kind of mold at all. Moreover, it will stimulate the mold to shoot out spores for reproduction, thus spreading more rapidly. All the medical staff were infected as a result. Seeing that the situation was out of control, Jack first sealed the gaps in the main door with gypsum, and then used liquid nitrogen to accelerate the hardening of the gypsum, completely blocking the door. Although this prevented the situation from deteriorating further, the spreading speed of the mold still increased. However, a pregnant woman's amniotic fluid suddenly ruptured. Once the baby is born here, without immunity, he will surely die. At this time, someone found a handprint on Mike's water cup. It turned out that he often washed his hands with disinfectant, which led to the cultivation of a superbacterium on his hands that could resist the mold. In order to verify this statement, he quickly collected the bacteria on his hands and sprayed the bacteria onto the ceiling through a straw. The next second, the mold began to dissipate on a large scale, but relying on just these few bacteria couldn't save everyone at all. Jack had no choice but to contact Morgan and ask him to cultivate the superbacterium from Mike outside. Morgan took the sample to the laboratory and tried to cultivate the bacteria as quickly as possible, because the pregnant woman whose amniotic fluid had ruptured had reached the critical moment of childbirth. If the baby was infected with the mold at birth, it would surely die. However, when Morgan returned to the hospital with the superbacterium, he was stopped by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This was because the mold had spread to the exit, and going in would directly lead to infection and coma. Fortunately, Jack thought that the bacterial solution could be turned into water vapor and transmitted into the hospital through the fire hose. So a woman went to the kitchen and drilled a small hole in the natural gas pipeline with a bottle opener. Then she ignited the natural gas. When the fire hose was burned red hot, the others in the hospital opened the fire hydrants and pulled out all the hoses. Morgan then opened the fire hose outside and slowly poured the superbacterium into the hose. The liquid turned into water vapor through the high temperature and filled every corner of the hospital. Soon, the mold was completely eliminated. The people who had fainted slowly woke up, and the baby was born smoothly. Everyone successfully survived this crisis.